So, WandaVision is coming to a close. Now, there won't be any spoilers here because I haven't even seen the final episode at the time of this recording. But you've got to admit that the first entry in the MCU television universe is interesting. I won't really comment on the plot or my thoughts on the show, I guess we can do that next time. But it did get me thinking. See, WandaVision has been going through all the different eras of television and hitting the classics. But there are still a bunch of other great TV shows out there that they haven't even touched. So, what if WandaVision used different TV shows? Now, this will largely just be my choices and what I personally would like to see in the shows that I like to watch. But you can play along too down in the comments and let me know all of the different shows that you would use to rearrange Wanda's life. Okay, so the first episode, I absolutely loved what they did because I love to watch the Dick Van Dyke Show. It's legitimately funny even to this day. And of course, the house was an exact recreation, so it was perfect. As for another show that they could use in this time, I'm sure many people will be tempted to say I Love Lucy, but I'm gonna go with the Andy Griffith Show. Now, it might not seem like the best fit, but they have consistently portrayed Westview as a small town. And so I think that could come across even better if, say, Vision were the sheriff and had to settle some small town squabbles. I guess that makes Wanda an Aunt B type character, but Agnes could still come over and do all the same stuff she did. The next episode I would do would be modeled after Gilligan's Island. Now, just to start off, they wouldn't be trapped on an island or anything. They would still be in Westview. But maybe Vision could start to get suspicious a little early and try and escape, and that's where the being trapped part comes in. Mostly, it would just be the humor of the show and the types of characters, since honestly, Vision and Wanda would be dead ringers for the Professor and Marianne. And I think the ripoff of one of the greatest theme songs in television history would alone be worth the effort. Next is actually a pretty tough one, because I would have gone with the Brady Bunch because I loved watching reruns of that when I was growing up, but that's the one they used in the actual show. So I have to come up with something different, and I think I'm gonna go with Happy Days. Now, we do run into a problem here because while Happy Days is produced at the right time, it's set in the wrong decade, and we don't want to go backwards in time. So I think just the production of the show, and maybe you could throw in a Fonzie type character if you needed to, but I think just the look and everything else would be fine for this episode. If not, if you have to go with the 50s aesthetic as well, then I have a solution. The boundaries could start to slip more in this episode, and other things could be bleeding in from the past, and Wanda can be like, oh no, what's going on? If you have to do it that way. Now, in the actual episode 4, they were mostly in the real world, and I imagine that was due to scheduling, largely. But for the sake of the exercise, let's just say that we continue on with our trend into the 80s in this episode. Now, for the actual WandaVision, they used Family Ties, which is a pretty good choice. But I think I'm going to go with Cheers. I watched Cheers a few years back, I'm not really sure why. Okay, yes I am, I remember now. I was watching The Good Place with Ted Danson, and then the season ended, and I thought, I want to watch more Ted Danson. And so I watched 11 seasons of Ted Danson on Cheers. It was pretty good. But since they do have the kids by this point, I doubt they would spend most of their time in a public bar area. Maybe you could turn it into like a pizzeria or something if you wanted to, but they don't even necessarily have to spend all of their time in that location, since even Cheers did leave the set on occasion. Mostly what we're after here is the character archetypes that they could be filling, and the sort of general humor of the show. Vision could have his own sort of side mission where he starts to investigate what's going on even further. The next episode would probably be my favorite out of all of them, because I would make it a Full House style episode. Now, in the actual show, they just sort of skipped over the 90s and went straight to Malcolm in the Middle, but for this, we will be stopping off with Full House. And while Full House may have started in the 80s, it is firmly a 90s staple. And it was something that I loved to watch all the time on Nick at Night, ABC Family, and I would eat my lunch to it every day of the summer. I love that show. And it's perfect because, well, I'm assuming if you're watching this video, then you've already seen the actual show, but let's just say a certain uncle moves in at this point, and it's just like Uncle Jesse. They could back the car into the kitchen, or I don't know, have the Beach Boys over or something. There's no shortage of classic moves to go to. Though I imagine they stayed away from this one on purpose, because I've heard multiple people that I know say they should do this one specifically just because of who Elizabeth's sisters are, so maybe they didn't want to touch it. But Full House is an all-American classic and deserves to be recognized as such in this way. Alright, now what are we at? The 6th episode? Okay, so this will be the 2000s replacement, and I think an Office-style episode could work, or more accurately, Parks and Recreation. I just prefer that show in general over The Office. I think the people behind the scenes knew what they were doing better, they were in the swing of it, and it has a more generally optimistic messaging. But I can easily see a hilarious style side mission where Vision is trying to figure out what's going on, and he can even escape like he did in the actual episode. There would just be more zooming and whip panning and that sort of thing, like a documentary crew is actually capturing this whole thing. And it would be better done than they tried in actual episode 7 of the series, but let's just go into that. The last themed episode that we saw of WandaVision was largely based on Modern Family, which is a show that I've never seen, nor do I ever intend to see it. But it didn't do the genre credence to its fullest extent. I realized they were trying to go with an at-home feel, but I feel like they dropped the ball a little bit. So I say we just shake everything up. The previous episode could have ended exactly the same way, with Wanda expanding the borders and everything, except this time she changes everything up. Since obviously the old style wasn't working, she needs to do something else. And so, she creates a dark, gritty reboot, and their lives become like a CW Arrowverse show. That might not sound great to everybody, but I think some good-natured ribbing across the aisle at their counterparts at DC would be great fun. And it would be good to have the show lift some of its format off of one of the first superhero shows to be a part of a grander shared universe, kinda like this one is. Some of the neighbors could start to turn on Wanda and Vision because they notice their powers, or maybe they're under the control of some other magical thing within the Hex, who knows. And maybe they could even find an ally unexpectedly in Photon when she enters and gains more control of her abilities. And Wanda could even narrate the opening like they love to do. Can't you just hear it? My name is Wanda Maximoff, and I am the most powerful woman in the universe. After 5 years turned to dust, I returned home with only one goal: to save the men I loved. To the outside world, I was just an Avenger. But my old approach wasn't enough. I had to become someone else. I had to become something else. I had to become the Scarlet Witch. Well, maybe the accent's a little much, but it seems to come and go in the show as well. And plus, they only just now referred to her superhero name after years of only calling her Wanda. So I think they can help her embrace her identity a little better. But I think Marvel knows that. As for the remaining episodes in the season, I think it's fine to do what I think they've done already, and just have it be caught up to modern Marvel. And it's basically just a Marvel movie on the small screen, aspect ratio and all. Which, by the way, side note, I did love the changing aspect ratios from inside and outside the Hex. It was just a great little detail that made everything that much more believable as an actual show versus real life. But we can talk about that more when the show is done, which, honestly, I'm beginning to think it won't wrap up everything, and this show will tie into Doctor Strange even more than we thought. But those are the choices that I would make if I were to recreate WandaVision with different TV shows. Which television shows would you put these Avengers in? Let me know down in the comments. And as always, thanks for watching.